You know that moment when someone says something that sounds polite on the surface, but leaves you feeling like you've been subtly jabbed in the ribs. Maybe it's the coworker who sighs loudly and says, "Oh, I guess I'll just handle this myself again." Or the family member who drops a no, it's fine with a tone that suggests it's anything but fine. Passive-aggressive behavior has a way of creeping into our lives, leaving us frustrated, confused, and often reacting in ways we later regret. But what if there was a way to meet these moments not with anger or defensiveness, but with unshakable calm and quiet power? That's where Stoicism comes in. 2,000 years ago, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Those words aren't just philosophy, they're a practical toolkit for disarming passive aggression without losing your composure. Stoicism teaches us that while we can't control how others behave, we can always control how we respond. It's not about suppressing emotions or playing games. It's about recognizing that our peace of mind is too valuable to be handed over to someone else's subtle jabs or backhanded compliments. Imagine standing in front of a passive-aggressive remark like a rock in a river, letting the water rush around you without being swept away. That's the core of Stoic grace, emotional detachment from what you can't change, and fierce focus on what you can, your own actions, your own mindset, your own integrity. In this video, we'll explore how to apply timeless Stoic principles to modern-day passive aggression. You'll learn how to spot these behaviors without letting them unsettle you, how to respond with clarity instead of confusion, and most importantly, how to reclaim your emotional freedom so that no amount of subtle negativity can throw you off balance. This isn't about winning arguments or outmaneuvering others, it's about cultivating an inner strength that makes passive aggression bounce off you like rain off a well-waxed coat. By the end, you'll have a roadmap for handling these situations with the kind of poise that would make Marcus Aurelius nod in approval. So let's begin. Passive-aggressive behavior often feels like a puzzle wrapped in a riddle. Why can't people just say what they mean? But through a Stoic lens, this indirect communication isn't about you at all. It's a window into someone else's internal struggle, their inability to express frustration or disappointment openly. Think of it like a smoldering fire hidden beneath layers of polite words. The heat is real, but the person lacks the tools to put it out constructively. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus nailed it when he said, "People are disturbed not by things, but by their judgments." Passive aggression stems from those unchecked judgments, the belief that direct confrontation is dangerous, that vulnerability is weakness, or that their needs don't deserve to be voiced clearly. Take the classic example of a roommate who mutters, "Guess I'll just clean the whole apartment again," while slamming cabinets. On the surface, it's a complaint about chores. But beneath, it's likely fear of being ignored, of seeming demanding, or of rejection if they ask directly. Stoicism reminds us that their behavior is a reflection of their own inner turbulence, not a measure of your worth. When you encounter these moments, pause and ask yourself, what might this person really be struggling with? Not to excuse the behavior, but to detach from taking it personally. This is where Stoic wisdom shifts the game. Instead of reacting to the barbed comment, you respond to the human behind it. Imagine someone handing you a gift wrapped in thorns. Stoicism teaches you to decline the thorns while acknowledging the gesture beneath. That doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It means choosing not to let their unresolved emotions dictate yours. So next time you face passive aggressiveness, try this. Name the unspoken need with calm clarity. Sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed. Let's talk about how we can split the chores differently. You're not playing their game, you're changing the rules with grace. Now reflect for a moment. When has passive-aggressiveness left you feeling tangled up? Did you sense the other person's frustration was really about something deeper? That awareness is your first step toward Stoic resilience, seeing the behavior without letting it seep under your skin. The heart of Stoic philosophy lies in a simple but life-changing idea. Some things are within our control, and some are not. Your coworker's snide remark about how someone always gets the easy projects, not yours to control. The sigh your partner lets out when you ask for help with the dishes. Also not yours, but your reaction. The space between their behavior and your response, that's where your power lies. Seneca, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, put it bluntly: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When someone's passive aggression stings, it's rarely about the words themselves. It's about the story we tell ourselves. They don't respect me. They think I'm lazy. I'm being attacked. Stoicism interrupts that spiral by asking, is this something I can change? If not, your energy is better spent on what you can influence, your own perspective. Picture this: you're in a team meeting and a colleague says, "Wow, you actually finished something on time for once." The old you might have bristled, fired back, or spent the rest of the day stewing. But the Stoic approach starts with a pause, a breath to separate the comment from your worth. Ask yourself, does their opinion define my competence? Of course not. Their words reveal their own insecurity, not your shortcomings. This is where the dichotomy of control becomes practical armor. You can't stop them from making remarks, but you can choose whether to let those remarks live rent-free in your mind. Here's the reframe: passive-aggressive behavior is never about you. It's about the other person's inability to communicate directly. Think of it like a faulty smoke alarm blaring at random. The problem isn't the fire, it's the alarm's wiring. When you stop taking the bait, you reclaim your peace. Try responding with detached kindness. I hear you're frustrated. Let me know if there's something specific you'd like to discuss. This does three things. It names the emotion behind the jab, it refuses to engage in the drama, and it leaves the door open for a real conversation on your terms. Stoicism turns these moments into opportunities for self-mastery. Every backhanded compliment becomes a chance to practice emotional resilience. Every sigh or eye roll, a test of your ability to stay grounded. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the way." Passive aggression, ironically, becomes the very thing that strengthens your resolve. The next time someone tries to get under your skin, remember, their words only have the power you give them. Your calm isn't just a response, it's a rebellion. Emotional detachment isn't about shutting down or becoming cold. It's about creating just enough space between someone else's words and your reaction to choose your response wisely. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." When someone tosses a passive-aggressive comment your way, they're often hoping for a reaction, a flare of anger, a defensive comeback, or better yet, proof that they've gotten under your skin. But Stoicism teaches us to deny them that victory. Think of their words like smoke drifting past you, visible, even irritating to the eyes, but ultimately powerless to harm you unless you decide to inhale it. Take a moment to picture this. You're at a family gathering and your aunt says, "You're so brave for wearing that outfit." The tone drips with faux admiration, but the intent is clear. The old you might have felt a hot rush of embarrassment or fired back with a sharp retort. But the Stoic approach, you observe the comment like a scientist studying a curious phenomenon, acknowledging its existence without letting it alter your inner weather. You might even smile and say, "Thank you, I love it too," robbing the remark of its sting by refusing to play along. This is the art of non-reaction. It's not passive, it's strategic. Imagine you're a mountain and passive-aggressive remarks are just clouds passing by. They might temporarily obscure your view, but they don't change the mountain's essence. The key is to recognize that their words only have the weight you assign them. Epictetus put it perfectly: if someone speaks badly of you, that's their problem. Your problem is how you react. Try this mental exercise. The next time someone's tone or phrasing feels like a subtle jab, pause and visualize their words written on a slip of paper. Then imagine dropping that paper into a stream and watching it float away. The words exist, but they don't stick to you. This simple practice trains your brain to process negativity without absorbing it. Now consider a situation in your own life where detachment could shift the dynamic. Maybe it's the friend who jokingly points out your flaws, or the coworker who accidentally forwards an email questioning your work. What would it feel like to meet those moments with calm curiosity instead of frustration? That's the Stoic superpower, transforming irritation into an opportunity to exercise your emotional resilience. One of the most powerful tools Stoicism gives us is the pause, that brief but transformative space between provocation and response. Epictetus said, "First learn the meaning of what you say and then speak." When faced with passive aggression, that pause becomes your anchor. It's not just about counting to 10, it's about creating enough distance to respond from clarity rather than reflex. Here's how to put it into practice. When you hear that backhanded compliment or loaded remark, stop, breathe, let the words hang in the air for a moment. That tiny gap is where your power lies. The difference between reacting impulsively and choosing a response that aligns with your values. Start by acknowledging the behavior without fueling it. Imagine your coworker says, "Must be nice to take long lunches while the rest of us actually work." Instead of snapping back or justifying yourself, try a neutral observation. "I hear some frustration in that comment." This does something remarkable. It names the energy beneath the words without absorbing it. You're not ignoring the dig, but you're also not letting it steer the conversation. Next, invite clarity with open-ended questions. "Can you help me understand what you mean by that?" This shifts the dynamic instantly. Passive aggression thrives in ambiguity, so asking for specifics forces the other person to either articulate their real concern or retreat. Notice how different this feels from saying, "Why are you being so rude?" One approach escalates, the other disarms. The final step is the hardest but most liberating. Refuse to mirror their tone. When someone's words carry a subtle edge, matching their energy only pulls you into their emotional orbit. Stoicism teaches that we can't control others, but we can always control our own conduct. Respond as if you're the only adult in the room, because emotionally you are. "I'd love to find a solution that works for both of us. What do you need?" This isn't about being a doormat, it's about setting the terms of engagement. Think of it like a dance. Passive-aggressive people are used to partners who follow their lead, twisting, dodging, or colliding with every jab. But when you step out of rhythm, when you move with deliberate calm, they suddenly have no one to dance with. Their words lose momentum because you're no longer playing the expected role. Consider how this might look in your life. Maybe it's the neighbor who jokes about your messy yard, or the relative who innocently compares your career to someone else's. What would change if, instead of bristling, you paused, then redirected with steady curiosity? That's the Stoic pause in action, not a weapon but a shield. And with practice, it becomes second nature, a reflex stronger than any knee-jerk reaction. Epictetus also warned, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak." Sometimes the most powerful response to passive aggression is silence, not the cold, punishing kind, but the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth isn't up for debate. Try it the next time a veiled barb comes your way. Let it land, breathe, and watch how often the other person, unnerved by your lack of reaction, backpedals or fills the silence with their own discomfort. That's the paradox. When you refuse to hand them your emotional reins, they often realize they never really had hold of them to begin with. There's a quiet strength in saying nothing at all. Seneca once wrote, "The more you say, the more likely you are to say something foolish." In the face of passive-aggressive remarks, silence isn't surrender, it's a strategic retreat to higher ground. Picture this: a Roman senator spreads rumors about Marcus Aurelius, questioning his leadership in hushed tones at every banquet. Instead of rebutting each whisper, the emperor simply continues his work, steady, unshaken, letting his actions drown out the noise. Over time, the gossip dies of starvation because he refuses to feed it. That's the Stoic secret. Passive aggression thrives on engagement, but silence starves it. Think of silence like a mirror. When someone tosses a veiled insult your way, you're always so lucky things work out for you, and you meet it with calm stillness. They're forced to confront the emptiness of their own words. No defensive explanation, no counter jab, just the echo of their own pettiness. This isn't about bottling up emotions, it's about denying the other person the drama they crave. Reactive responses pour gasoline on the fire, but thoughtful silence lets it smolder out. History offers a striking example. When the philosopher Cato the Younger was publicly mocked by political rivals, he didn't dignify their taunts with a reply. His silence wasn't weakness, it was a declaration that their opinions held no power over him. As Seneca observed, to be silent is not to say nothing, it is to say what cannot be put into words. In that space, the passive-aggressive person is left alone with the weight of their own unresolved feelings. Try this experiment. Next time a coworker mutters, "Some of us actually care about quality," resist the urge to justify or correct. Simply pause, make brief eye contact, and return to your task. Watch how discomfort settles over them when their hook finds no bait. Silence shifts the dynamic because it forces the other person to sit with the awkwardness they created. Consider the moments in your own life where words only escalated tension. What would change if you'd let the silence speak instead? Maybe it's the sibling who jokes about your life choices, or the colleague who helpfully points out every minor mistake. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring the behavior. It means you're refusing to let it dictate the terms of engagement. Here's the subtle art: pair silence with unshakable body language. A relaxed posture, a neutral expression, these signal that you're unaffected, not suppressing anger. The goal isn't to punish or provoke. It's to demonstrate that their words simply don't land where they intended. Epictetus advised, if you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. Silence is the ultimate judgment, a verdict that their remarks aren't worth your energy. So when might silence be more powerful than a retort? When the other person is itching for a reaction, when your peace is more valuable than proving a point. When your dignity speaks louder than any comeback ever could. Stoicism teaches that we don't owe anyone our emotional participation, least of all those who try to undermine us with sideways comments. Sometimes the most powerful response is to let their words hang in the air, unanswered, until the emptiness reveals what they truly were, not a weapon but a confession of their own unrest. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his private journal, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come of it. If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage." That's the Stoic shift, seeing passive-aggressive behavior not as a dagger aimed at you, but as a clumsy cry for help wrapped in thorns. When someone makes a snide comment about your success or drops a "must be nice" with a pointed smile, it's easy to take it personally. But Stoicism invites us to look deeper. What if their sarcasm is just envy in disguise, their backhanded compliment, a sign of their own unmet needs? Reframing isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the illusion that their words define your worth. Think of it like this. Imagine you're holding a cup of coffee and someone bumps into you, making you spill it. Your first instinct might be anger. Why weren't they watching where they were going? But what if you knew that person had just received terrible news? Suddenly, the spill isn't about you at all. Passive aggression works the same way. That friend who jokes about your new job might secretly be grieving their own stalled career. The sibling who innocently compares your parenting to theirs could be drowning in insecurity. When you reframe their behavior as a reflection of their inner world, their words lose the power to wound. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. He wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy, not by retaliating but by refusing to become what hurt you." When his rivals spread rumors, he didn't counter with gossip. He asked what fear or lack drove them to it. This isn't passive acceptance, it's active compassion. Try applying this the next time someone's tone feels like a paper cut. Instead of thinking they're trying to hurt me, ask what pain might they be carrying. You might not have the full story, but you don't need it to choose your response. Here's how this plays out in real life. Your coworker mutters, "Some of us don't have connections to skip the line." Instead of firing back, pause. Could their remark stem from feeling overlooked? Maybe they've been passed over for promotions or feel invisible. A Stoic response might sound like, "It sounds like you're frustrated about fairness." I'd be happy to talk about how we can both advocate for ourselves. You're not absorbing their negativity, you're redirecting it towards something constructive. The key is to separate the what from the why. The what is their behavior, the sigh, the eye roll, the loaded praise. The why is the unmet need beneath it, a craving for recognition, fear of inadequacy, or unresolved resentment. Stoicism teaches us to respond to the why while letting the what roll off like water. Epictetus said, "Any person capable of angering you becomes your master." Reframing isn't just kindness to others, it's liberation for yourself. So the next time you encounter passive aggression, try this mental exercise. Picture the person as a child. What might that younger version of them have needed but never received? Approval, safety, a voice. Suddenly, their adult-sized barbs feel smaller, almost pitiable. This isn't about playing therapist, it's about reclaiming your peace by seeing their behavior for what it truly is, a reflection of their struggles, not your value. Marcus Aurelius left us a challenge. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. When you meet passive aggression with compassion without surrendering your boundaries, you're not just practicing Stoicism. You're rewriting the script, and in that quiet act of reframing, you'll find something unexpected. Not just resilience, but a deeper understanding of the human condition itself. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out, they're the guardrails that keep you from veering off course. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Epictetus put it bluntly, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." And sometimes the strongest reaction is a boundary set with quiet conviction. Passive-aggressive behavior thrives in gray areas, those unspoken zones where people test limits, drop hints, and expect you to decode their resentment. Stoicism teaches us to replace those fuzzy lines with clarity, not as punishment, but as an act of self-respect. Imagine your neighbor jokingly calls you selfish for not lending them your car again. The old you might have sighed and handed over the keys to avoid tension, but the Stoic approach, you respond with calm precision. I'd prefer direct communication about what you need rather than jokes. No anger, no apology, just a gentle but unyielding redirection. This isn't about being harsh, it's about refusing to participate in the dance of indirectness. Epictetus warned, "Tolerate the foolish, but don't enable them." Setting boundaries is how you stop tolerating at the expense of your own peace. Here's the Stoic secret: boundaries aren't negotiations. They're declarations. When someone says, "Fine, I'll just do it myself," with that trademark sigh, "Try this script. If you'd like help, please ask directly." "I can't respond to hints." You're not attacking, you're recalibrating the conversation. Think of it like training a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger your emotional resilience becomes. Now consider where you've let passive aggression slide because confrontation felt uncomfortable. Maybe it's the friend who teases about your life choices, or the coworker who forgets to include you in emails. What would change if you set a boundary with the same steadiness you'd use to hold a door open for someone, not slamming it shut, but simply refusing to let it swing wildly on its hinges? Stoic boundaries share three traits. They're clear, compassionate, and non-negotiable. Clear because ambiguity fuels passive aggression. I won't engage in conversations where I'm spoken to with sarcasm. Leaves no room for interpretation. Compassionate because you're not mirroring their frustration, you're modeling the directness they lack. And non-negotiable because boundaries that bend to guilt or drama aren't boundaries at all. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." That's the heart of Stoic boundary setting, recognizing that another person's behavior only becomes your problem if you let it. So when your sibling innocently compares your parenting to theirs, you might say, "I'm happy with my choices. Let's focus on our own families." You're not dismissing them, you're redirecting the energy back to where it belongs, on their side of the line. The next time someone's passive aggression tries to trespass on your peace, remember, boundaries are the ultimate act of self-ownership. They're not about controlling others, they're about honoring yourself. And in that honoring, you'll find something unexpected. Not isolation, but deeper respect from those who truly matter. So ask yourself, where have you been too flexible with your limits? And what would it feel like to stand firm, not with anger, but with the unshakable calm of someone who knows their worth? Here's the paradox of ego. The more tightly we cling to being right, the more wrong the situation becomes. Seneca saw this clearly when he wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." But delay isn't just about waiting, it's about loosening the grip of our own self-importance. Picture this: you're in a meeting and a colleague dismisses your idea with a smirk. "That'll never work. We tried something like that years ago." Your pulse quickens. The urge to prove them wrong rises like a wave, but Stoicism whispers a different path. What if you let the comment land, then reply, "You might be right, tell me more about what happened when you tried it." Suddenly, the tension deflates. Their defensiveness has nothing to push against. By conceding the possibility of being wrong, you're not surrendering, you're disarming. Humility is the Stoic's secret weapon. It doesn't mean agreeing with every critique or shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. It means recognizing that your worth isn't tied to winning every argument. Seneca called humility armor that no insult can pierce. Think about that. When someone's passive aggression is meant to provoke, humility turns their arrows to dust. Imagine your roommate snaps. Some of us actually clean up after ourselves. Instead of firing back, you might say, "You're right, I missed those dishes. I'll get them now." No drama, no escalation, just a quiet acknowledgement that dissolves their ammunition. The workplace is where this practice shines. Consider a team lead who constantly corrects you in front of others, their tone dripping with polite condescension. "Oh, I see you've chosen an interesting approach." The ego wants to retaliate, to prove your brilliance, but Stoicism asks a better question. What's more important here, my reputation or the project's success? Sometimes the wisest response is, "I'd love your expertise on how to improve this." You're not feeding their superiority complex, you're redirecting their energy toward something useful. This isn't about playing small. It's about recognizing that ego is the heaviest baggage we carry into conflicts. Marcus Aurelius journaled, "You can strip away many unnecessary troubles that afflict you, for they lie entirely in your judgment." When we stop needing to be seen as the smartest person in the room, we free up immense energy that could be spent on actual solutions. Try this reframe. Every passive-aggressive dig is an invitation to practice humility. The neighbor who jokes about your lawn, instead of bristling, laugh and say, "Guilty as charged, I'm no gardener." The family member who innocently compares your life to your cousin's. "You're right, they're doing amazing things. I'm happy for them." When you refuse to take the bait, something remarkable happens. The game ends. Without an opponent, passive aggression collapses under its own weight. So next time someone's words feel like a challenge to your competence or worth, pause. Ask yourself, is this a hill worth dying on? Often, the answer is no. And in that realization, you'll find the quiet power. Seneca described the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it knows its own strength. Ego screams, humility speaks softly, and in that softness it's heard the clearest. Marcus Aurelius didn't just think about Stoicism, he wrote it down. Every night, by candlelight, the most powerful man in Rome would open his journal and untangle the day's events with ink and honesty. Those private pages, now known as meditations, weren't meant for praise or posterity. They were his workshop for turning raw emotion into wisdom. And here's the secret: you don't need an empire to benefit from the same practice. Journaling is the Stoic's laboratory, a place to dissect passive-aggressive encounters without an audience, to examine your reactions under the microscope of self-awareness. Start with this simple ritual. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what did this interaction teach me about my triggers? Not why were they so rude. That keeps you stuck in their orbit. Instead, focus on your own growth. When your coworker muttered, "Some people actually prepare for meetings," did your chest tighten? Did your mind race to defend yourself? Write that down, then go deeper. What story did I tell myself about what their comment meant? Passive aggression thrives in the gap between what was said and what we heard. Journaling bridges that gap with clarity. Marcus Aurelius modeled this perfectly. After a senator publicly undermined him, he didn't brood or plot revenge. That night he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant," not to condemn them, but to remind himself, their behavior is their nature. Mine is to remain undisturbed. His journal was where he rehearsed resilience before he needed it. Try this prompt next time someone's tone leaves a residue. If this interaction were a test, what was it testing in me? Maybe it revealed a hidden fear of being seen as incompetent, or an old wound from being mocked as a child. The goal isn't to blame yourself, it's to spot patterns. Like a scientist reviewing data, you might notice that comments about your work ethic sting more on days you're already feeling behind. Or that family jabs land harder when you've skipped sleep. These aren't excuses for others' behavior, they're maps to your emotional blind spots. Here's where Stoic journaling differs from venting. Venting pours gasoline on frustration, but Stoic reflection transforms it into fuel for growth. Instead of "I can't believe she said that," try what part of that bothered me most and why. The first keeps you circling the drain, the second hands you a ladder. Epictetus advised, don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Journaling slows that force to a manageable pace. Make it practical. Keep a notes app or small notebook for real-time observations. When your aunt says you're so brave to post those photos at your age, jot down the exact words, your physical reaction. Did your face get hot? And the story you told yourself, "She thinks I'm embarrassing." Later, revisit it with fresh eyes. Was that truly her intention, or did I interpret it through my own insecurities? over time, you'll spot the difference between genuine malice and your own projections. The magic lies in consistency. Seneca wrote nightly letters to his friend Lucilius not to complain, but to distill lessons from daily friction. Your journal can serve the same purpose. Try ending each entry with Marcus Aurelius' favorite question. What virtue does this situation require of me? Patience, courage, humor. This shifts the focus from their flaws to your agency. Think of your journal as a silent mentor. The page doesn't judge or interrupt. It waits for you to untangle the knots yourself. And in that quiet space, something remarkable happens. Passive-aggressive remarks lose their power to haunt you. They become case studies in human behavior, yours and theirs. You'll start to see these encounters not as personal attacks, but as opportunities to practice the very Stoic principles you're cultivating. After all, Marcus didn't become unshakable by ignoring his emotions. He became wise by meeting them on the page with ruthless curiosity and relentless compassion. Empathy doesn't mean lowering your drawbridge to every emotional siege. Stoicism teaches us to extend understanding without surrendering our peace, to see the storm in others without letting it rain on our own parade. Epictetus put it perfectly: when someone seems to have wronged you, consider this. What did they think was right? That shift from how dare they to what led them here changes everything. Picture your uncle at Thanksgiving. Dropping another must be nice to have time for hobbies as you mention your painting class. The old you might have bitten back with sarcasm or swallowed the jab in silence. But Stoic empathy asks a better question. What pain or envy might be hiding behind those words? Maybe he's spent decades grinding at a job he hates, convinced joy is frivolous. That doesn't excuse the comment, but it reframes it as his burden, not yours. Here's how to hold space for their struggle while holding the line for yourself. When your sister sighs, some of us can't just jet off on vacation whenever we want. Try this. I hear that it feels unfair. I've had seasons where I couldn't travel either. It's tough. You've named her emotion without apologizing for your choices. Then pivot to firmness. That said, I worked hard for this trip, and I'd love to share stories when I'm back if you're open to it. Notice what happened. You didn't dismiss her feelings or let them veto your joy. You offered a lifeline of connection, if you're open to it while keeping your boundaries intact. Marcus Aurelius modeled this balance daily. As emperor, he faced senators who mocked his philosophy as weakness. Instead of punishing them, he wrote in his journal, "They act this way because they know no better. My task is to show them better not by words but by example." That's the Stoic trifecta: compassion for their limits, clarity about your own, and the courage to let your actions speak louder than their complaints. Think of empathy like a museum guard. They understand why a child might want to touch the priceless painting, but they still stop the hand before it does damage. That's the sweet spot, recognizing the why behind passive aggression without letting it alter your course. Your coworkers' "wow, another long lunch" might stem from their own burnout. A Stoic response: I prioritize breaks to stay sharp. Maybe that could help you too. You're not absorbing their resentment, you're reflecting it back as an invitation to rise. The key is to separate understanding from endorsement. You can grasp why your friend jokes about your success while still saying, "I'd rather celebrate wins together than compare." Empathy isn't permission, it's perspective. And sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is show someone their words won't dim your light. So next time passive aggression masquerades as concern, you're really eating that. Try this 3-step reset. Pause to consider their unseen struggle. Respond to the pain behind the words. "It sounds like you're worried about health. I appreciate that." Then gently redirect, "I'm comfortable with my choices." No battle, no drama, just a quiet demonstration that empathy and self-respect can coexist. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, listen more, speak less." But Stoic listening isn't passive. It's hearing the cry beneath the criticism, then choosing how or whether to answer. That's the ultimate power, seeing their shadows without stepping into the shade yourself. Imagine 2 paths diverging in the woods of conflict. One leads to the quick satisfaction of lashing back, the other to the quiet dignity of rising above. Stoicism always chooses the longer path. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "No one is hurt by a slight unless they take it as such." That's the heart of the long view, recognizing that passive-aggressive behavior only derails you if you hand it the controls. Think of it like chess. The amateur reacts to every move, desperate to counter each piece lost. The grandmaster sacrifices pawns to protect the king, seeing 10 moves ahead. When your neighbor mutters, "Must be nice to afford new things," while eyeing your car, the Stoic doesn't engage in a battle of snide remarks. They see the bigger board. Preserving neighborly harmony matters more than scoring points in a petty exchange. History offers a masterclass in this. When the philosopher Diogenes was mocked for living in a barrel, he didn't defend his choices or insult his critics. He simply invited them inside. "If only you could be as content with little as I am." His response wasn't about winning the argument. It was about embodying the very virtue his detractors lacked. That's the Stoic secret. Passive aggression loses its power when you refuse to measure your worth by others' barbs. Consider the modern workplace. A colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting, adding, "I just polished it up a bit." The short-term reaction, call them out publicly, demand recognition. But the long view asks, what's more valuable, being right or being respected? Sometimes letting the slight pass builds something more enduring, a reputation for grace under fire. Seneca advised, "The wise man can lose nothing. He has everything invested in himself." When you invest in your character rather than momentary victories, you're playing an infinite game, one where the rules of pettiness don't apply. Try this reframe. Next time someone's passive aggression tempts you to retaliate, pause and ask, what will this interaction look like in 5 years? The neighbor's snide comment about your garden will be long forgotten, but the reputation you built as someone unshaken by smallness will endure. That's the paradox. When you stop fighting for air in every conflict, you create space for something far more powerful. The quiet authority of someone who knows their value doesn't need proving. Marcus Aurelius faced constant betrayal from those he trusted, yet his journal reveals no bitterness, only resolve. The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. Not by outmaneuvering them, but by refusing to let their behavior dictate yours. So when your in-law jokes about your life choices at dinner, smile and say, "I'm grateful for the path I've chosen." No defense, no counterattack, just an unassailable contentment that leaves their words hanging in the air, harmless. The long view isn't passive, it's strategic. It's the understanding that every interaction is a brick in the monument of your character. And while petty conflicts crumble like sandcastles, virtue stands like marble, unchanged by the tides of others' moods. As Seneca reminded us, life's too short to spend it wounded by trifles. The next time passive aggression knocks at your door, ask yourself, will this matter when I'm on my deathbed? If not, let it pass like a cloud, because the sky of your integrity is far vaster than any storm they could summon. Cato the Younger didn't just talk about Stoic principles, he lived them in the most brutal arena of all, Roman politics. Imagine standing in the Senate, hearing whispers of treason spread by rivals who wanted you gone. Most men would have erupted, demanded apologies, threatened revenge. But Cato, he'd simply return to his scrolls unshaken. When a rival once spat insults at him in public, Cato's only reply was, "I disagree with your words, but I'll defend your right to speak them." That wasn't weakness, it was the quiet power of a man who knew his character couldn't be toppled by petty slights. Now fast forward to today. Someone subtweets about you, or a co-worker accidentally leaves you off an important email chain. Our instinct: fire back, correct the record, make sure everyone knows the truth. But Stoicism asks, what would Cotto do? He wouldn't waste energy on gossip or passive-aggressive skirmishes. He'd focus on what he could control: his work, his integrity, his refusal to let others drag him into their drama. The Stoics didn't ignore injustice, they just chose their battles with surgical precision. As Epictetus put it, if someone tried to take control of your body, you'd fight to the death. Why then do you hand over your mind so easily? Take the story of Cotto's sister, Servilia, who openly mocked his frugal lifestyle. While others might have lashed out or slunk away in shame, Cotto responded with humor. Your jewels cost more than my house, yet I sleep just as soundly. He didn't need her approval or anyone's to validate his choices. That's the lesson. Passive aggression only works if you care about the aggressor's opinion. Strip that away and their words become background noise. Now consider modern parallels. A colleague jokes about your promotion being luck, or a relative innocently compares your life to someone else's. The Stoic move isn't to clap back, it's to channel Cotto's unflappability. You might be right, you could say, but I'm proud of the work I've done. No defensiveness, no escalation, just a gentle reminder that their narrative doesn't define yours. History offers another masterclass in Seneca's life. Exiled by Emperor Claudius over false rumors, he didn't rage against the injustice. Instead, he wrote letters about the beauty of nature and the freedom found in simplicity. Years later, when Nero's courtiers spread lies about him, Seneca doubled down on his philosophy, telling friends, "They can exile my body, but not my mind." That's the ultimate rebuttal to passive aggression, living so fully that slander can't find a foothold. So here's your challenge. Next time someone's sideways comment stings, pause and ask, what would my Stoic hero do? Not as a rigid script, but as a compass. Maybe it's choosing silence over a cutting remark, or responding to envy with pity rather than pride. These figures weren't saints, they were human. What set them apart was their refusal to let others' pettiness lower them to the same level. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal during yet another day of backstabbing politics, the best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. In other words, the most powerful response to passive aggression isn't a clever comeback, it's a life so well lived that their words simply don't stick. The Stoics didn't wait for chaos to find them, they greeted it at dawn. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence not as pessimism but as preparation.'" This is premeditatio malorum, the ancient practice of mentally rehearsing life's friction before it happens. Imagine it like a fire drill for your emotions. When passive aggression flares up, you've already navigated it in your mind, so the real thing feels like a rerun rather than a crisis. Start with 5 minutes each morning. Close your eyes and visualize a likely scenario. Maybe your coworker's helpful critique dressed as concern, or your siblings' joke about your life choices. See their words coming toward you like a slow-moving ball. Now rehearse your Stoic reflexes, the pause, the breath, the detached observation. "Ah, there's the usual comment about my career." How predictable. This isn't negative visualization, it's emotional vaccination. By exposing yourself to small doses of discomfort in a controlled environment, you build immunity to its sting. Marcus Aurelius perfected this. Before entering the Senate's snake pit of gossip and power plays, he'd write reminders like, when you wake up, tell yourself, "The people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant," not to resent them, but to remove the element of surprise. Passive aggression loses its punch when you've already seen the punchline. Here's how to make it practical. pair this mental rehearsal with a physical anchor. Try holding a coin in your palm during morning meditation. When you imagine a snide remark, press the coin gently, a tactile reminder that you're the one holding the currency of your reactions. Later, when someone drops a "must be nice" in conversation, slip your hand into your pocket, find that coin, and let it ground you in the realization, "This is the moment I prepared for." The Stoics knew that resilience isn't built in the storm, it's forged in the quiet hours before. Seneca advised Lucilius to prepare your mind as if you've already entered the battlefield. For us, that battlefield might be a family dinner or a Slack channel. The principle remains: anticipate the jabs, and they become applause for your preparedness. Consider this twist: after visualizing challenges, add a gratitude counterweight. Today, I may hear a backhanded compliment, but I'll also see the sunset, taste my favorite coffee, laugh with a friend. This balances Stoic toughness with Stoic joy, because even as we armor ourselves against pettiness, we stay open to life's sweetness. Your morning ritual is the tuning of your emotional instrument. Each session of premeditatio malorum tightens another string, ensuring that when life plucks them, the note rings clear instead of snapping. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Those quiet minutes at dawn, that's where you claim your sovereignty. Epictetus offered one of the most liberating ideas in Stoic philosophy: no one can harm you unless you agree to be harmed. He compared the mind to an unstruck bell, silent until something touches it. That clapper isn't the insult, the backhanded compliment, or the sarcastic jab. It's your permission for those words to land. Picture your inbox flooded with passive-aggressive emails. Every unopened message is just data taking up server space until you click, until you assign it meaning. That's the illusion of harm, the belief that someone else's words have inherent power over your peace. Think of the last time someone's remark kept you up at night. Maybe it was your boss's "I'm surprised you finished this," or your partner's "Oh, you're actually cooking tonight." The sting didn't come from their tone, it came from the story you attached to it. They think I'm incompetent, they don't appreciate me. Stoicism flips the script. What if their comment was just noise, and the real pain was your own interpretation? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. Why then do we treat casual criticisms like verdicts?" Here's the modern twist on Epictetus' bell. Imagine your mind as a smartphone. Passive-aggressive comments are like notification bubbles, annoying but powerless until you tap them. Every time you replay that coworkers must be nice to leave early in your head, you're swiping open the app and refreshing the feed, the Stoic alternative. Swipe left, delete, or better yet, disable notifications altogether. Try this exercise. Recall a remark that recently bothered you. Now ask, did those words physically injure me? Did they alter reality, or did I give them that authority? The philosopher's insight wasn't that words don't matter, it's that their weight comes from the scales we choose to use. When your aunt sighs, "You've changed," you could interpret it as disapproval or curiosity. When your friend jokes about your new hobby, it could be mockery or their own insecurity speaking. The words haven't changed, only your relationship to them. This isn't about pretending hurtful comments don't exist. It's about recognizing that their voltage depends on your wiring. Epictetus trained his students to greet insults like a doctor diagnosing a fever. "Ah, this person is suffering from anger. How interesting." No defensiveness, just observation. Next time someone's passive aggression tries to hijack your mood, experiment with clinical detachment. Fascinating. They must really need validation today. You're not dismissing them, you're refusing to let their emotional weather become your climate. Now, reflect, what remark have you over-personalized? Was it really about you or the speaker's unspoken story? The unstruck bell doesn't mean silence, it means choosing which vibrations deserve your resonance. And in that choice lies an unexpected freedom, the realization that no one can hand you anger without your fingers first opening to receive it. There's a fine but crucial line between standing your ground and stomping on someone else's, and Stoicism walks it with precision. Seneca captured this perfectly when he wrote, "There is no great genius without some touch of madness, but also none without the gentleness to temper it." Stoic assertiveness isn't about volume or victory. It's the art of being immovable without being unkind. Picture a river meeting a boulder. The water doesn't scream or rage, it simply flows around, unwavering in its course. That's the essence of Stoic communication, clarity wrapped in calm, like steel sheathed in velvet. Take a classic passive-aggressive dig. "Oh, you're finally joining us for the project." An aggressive response might lash out. "Maybe if you actually communicated, I'd know what's going on," fueling the fire. A passive approach would shrug it off, swallowing the resentment. But Stoic assertiveness, it's the measured reply. "I hear frustration in that comment. Let's clarify expectations so we're aligned. Notice what happened." You named the emotion without mirroring the tone, redirected the energy towards solution finding, and refused to let their indirectness dictate yours. Seneca called this firmness of mind without hardness of heart. It's the ability to say no without apology, to set boundaries without venom, to disagree without disdain. Imagine your roommate leaves another passive note. "Guess I'll just buy all the groceries myself again." Aggressiveness might retaliate with a sarcastic "wow," martyring yourself already. But Stoic assertiveness responds, "If you'd like to split costs differently, let's talk specifics." You're not dismissing their gripe or escalating the drama. You're offering a ladder out of the passive-aggressive spiral. The magic lies in the phrasing. Stoic assertiveness often follows a simple script: acknowledge, reframe, redirect. "I hear your concern," acknowledge, but sarcasm makes collaboration harder, reframe. So let's address this directly, redirect. This isn't about winning, it's about elevating the conversation to a place where pettiness can't survive. Consider how differently power operates in these approaches. Aggressiveness tries to dominate others. Assertiveness dominates the moment. When your coworker mutters, "Must be nice to have the boss's favor," an aggressive comeback might accuse them of jealousy. But assertiveness disarms with something far more potent: unshakable neutrality. "If you're feeling overlooked, I'd be happy to discuss how we can both highlight our contributions." You've robbed their comment of its sting by treating it as a problem to solve, not a wound to poke. Epictetus offered a revealing test. If someone tried to take control of your body, you'd resist. Why surrender your mind? Stoic assertiveness is that resistance, not with fists but with unwavering presence. It's the quiet reminder that you'll engage, but only on terms that honor your self-respect. Try this litmus test for your next difficult interaction. Are you speaking at someone or with them? Are you reacting to their energy or choosing your own? The Stoics knew that true strength isn't measured by how loudly you can shout, but by how calmly you can hold your ground while leaving room for others to rise. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal after a day of political sniping, "The best answer to anger is silence, not the absence of words, but the presence of unshakable peace." That's the ultimate power move, responding to passive aggression not with more aggression, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth isn't up for debate. One of the hardest Stoic lessons to internalize is also the most freeing. You don't have to fix every broken interaction. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs." At first glance, that might sound like resignation, but it's actually radical empowerment. Think of it like weather patterns. You wouldn't waste energy arguing with rain for falling sideways or scold clouds for blocking the sun. Passive-aggressive behavior operates the same way. It's someone else's emotional climate, not yours to control. Consider your cousin who jokes about your life choices at every family gathering. The old you might have tried to logic them into kindness. Why do you always say things like that? Don't you see how hurtful it is? But Stoicism asks a better question. What if their comments say nothing about me and everything about their own unmet needs? This isn't about tolerating disrespect. It's about recognizing that you can't reprogram someone else's coping mechanisms. Imagine holding a cup of water while standing in a river. You can't stop the current, but you can choose not to pour their turbulence into your cup. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily as emperor. Senators would undermine him with veiled insults disguised as advice. Of course, philosophy is a noble hobby when one has endless free time. He didn't waste breath correcting them. In his journal, he noted, when another blames you or hates you, remember, they're acting from their own suppositions about good and evil. That shift from how dare they to how interesting that they think this way changes everything. Try this reframe. Next time your coworker mutters, "Some of us actually work through lunch," resist the urge to explain or defend. Instead, observe their behavior like an anthropologist studying a curious cultural ritual. Ah, here's the midday passive aggression ritual. Fascinating. By detaching from the need to fix their tone, you reclaim something precious, your emotional bandwidth. The Stoic practice here is acceptance, not approval. You're not condoning their behavior, you're simply acknowledging it as a reality, like traffic or bad Wi-Fi. Epictetus compared this to staying at an inn. If the host is rude, you don't demand they change personality. You stay the night, then leave. Apply that to passive-aggressive encounters. Your sister sighs, "I guess I'll just host Christmas again." You might say, "I appreciate you taking that on," then move the conversation forward. No fixing, no fueling, just acknowledging the moment without letting it derail you. Here's the paradox: when you stop trying to manage others' emotions, you gain real influence. People often use passive aggression because they've learned it gets reactions. Remove that payoff, and their patterns lose power. Like a child who stops tantrums when they no longer earn attention, adults often drop indirect jabs when met with calm neutrality. Think of a recent interaction where you exhausted yourself trying to correct someone's tone. What would change if you treated their behavior like background noise, present but not your concern? That's the freedom Marcus Aurelius described. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, not theirs, yours. And in that space between their words and your peace lies an incredible discovery. You were never responsible for fixing their brokenness to begin with. Epictetus once posed a question that cut straight to the bone. Why do you complain about another's faults when you're guilty of the same? It's uncomfortable but necessary medicine. The realization that passive aggression isn't just something we endure. Sometimes it's a language we speak without realizing it. Think of the last time you said fine when you meant furious, or no worries while silently tallying grievances. Stoicism teaches that self-awareness is the first step toward real change, and that includes auditing our own communication shadows. Start with this litmus test. Recall a recent interaction where frustration simmered beneath your words. Maybe you complimented a friend's outfit while secretly judging their spending habits, or told your partner, "Do whatever you want," when you really meant, "I need you to choose me." These aren't moral failures, they're human reflexes. The Stoic difference lies in catching them mid-flight, like a gardener plucking weeds before they take root. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal not to berate himself but to spot patterns. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. His entries weren't self-flagellation, they were course corrections. Try this exercise for one day. Track every time your words don't match your emotions. That sigh when your coworker asks for help, the "I'm not mad" text sent with deliberate punctuation. Note them without judgment, just observation. Epictetus compared this to holding up a mirror to the soul. If someone told you that others were speaking ill of you, wouldn't you demand specifics? Do the same for your own faults. The goal isn't shame, it's clarity. Passive aggression often stems from unvoiced needs, fear of rejection, avoidance of conflict, or the ache of unmet expectations. By tracing your own indirectness back to its source, you disarm it. Consider how often we weaponize politeness. "Oh, don't trouble yourself" drips with resentment when what we crave is acknowledgment. "You're so busy, I'll just handle it" becomes guilt wrapped in faux consideration. Stoicism challenges us to ask, what would it cost me to voice the real need here? Often the answer is pride, not safety. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than reality." The dread of directness is usually worse than the conversation itself. Now imagine a relationship where you've danced this pattern. What would change if you replaced whatever you think with "here's what I need," not as confrontation, but as an offering of trust? The philosopher Musonius Rufus taught that honesty is the highest form of respect for others and yourself. When you say, "I felt overlooked when you cancelled plans" instead of "must be nice to have so many options," you're not just communicating better, you're living Stoic virtue. This isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, scribbled reminders like "don't be overheard complaining," proof that self-mastery is a practice, not a destination. So tonight, as you reflect on your day, ask not "who wronged me," but "where did I obscure my truth?" That's the Stoic audit, not a ledger of faults, but a map toward the unshakable integrity that comes when your words and wisdom finally align. Humor has always been one of Stoicism's most underrated tools, not the biting sarcasm that wounds, but the light touch that disarms. Seneca, the philosopher who faced exile and court intrigue, understood this better than most. He wrote, "A joke can often make a point where gravity would fail." Imagine someone lobs a thinly veiled insult your way. Wow, you're actually on time today. The old you might have stiffened or fired back with equal venom, but the Stoic approach, a grin and a playful "thanks for noticing my character growth." You've neither absorbed their negativity nor escalated the tension. Instead, you've turned their passive-aggressive energy into a harmless ripple with the sheer force of levity. Think of humor like a judo move, using the other person's momentum to redirect the situation. When your aunt remarks, "You're so brave to wear that at your age," you could bristle or you could chuckle and say, "I figure if I'm going to embarrass my kids, I might as well commit." The comment loses its sting because you've refused to treat it as a weapon. Even Marcus Aurelius, who carried the weight of an empire, found strength in lightness. He journaled, "The best way to avenge yourself is to not be like your enemy." Sometimes the most subversive act is to meet pettiness with a smile. There's a psychological brilliance to this approach. Passive aggression thrives on unspoken tension, the uncomfortable pause after a loaded remark, the anticipation of your reaction. Humor disrupts that script entirely. Picture your coworker sighing, "Some of us don't have time for long lunches." Instead of justifying or snapping back, you might deadpan, "Ah, my secret. I've mastered the art of chewing very fast." The dynamic shifts instantly. Their attempt to provoke now feels silly, and you've maintained your dignity without a single defensive word. Seneca's letters are full of these moments. When critics mocked his wealth despite his Stoic teachings, he didn't lecture them on nuance. He joked, "If you think I'm a hypocrite, wait till you see how bad I am at geometry." By refusing to take himself or their barbs too seriously, he robbed their words of power. This isn't about becoming a stand-up comedian. It's about recognizing that laughter can be a form of boundary setting. When you respond to a snide, you're really eating that. With "yep, and I'm even gonna enjoy it," you're not just deflecting, you're declaring that their opinion isn't worth your distress. The key is tone. Stoic humor never punches down or retaliates. It simply refuses to play the game. Imagine your neighbor jokes must be nice to afford vacations. A cutting response would escalate. Unlike some people, I budget, but Stoic lightness, oh, it's all fake. I just Photoshop myself into travel brochures. You've acknowledged their comment without endorsing its bitterness, all while keeping your inner peace intact. Try this experiment. Next time someone's passive aggression lands, pause, then exaggerate their subtext to absurdity. If your sibling mutters, "You always get the easy chores," respond with true, "I bribed mom with cookies at birth." The moment becomes collaborative instead of combative. Even if they don't laugh, you've disrupted the cycle of resentment. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react. Humor is the ultimate reaction hack, a way to transform friction into something far less combustible. So the next time someone's words carry a hidden edge, remember, you don't need to blunt the blade. Just sidestep it with a wink and let their sharpness dissolve into thin air. After all, as Seneca proved, sometimes the wisest response isn't a rebuttal, it's a well-timed smile. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." Be one. That's the heart of the Stoic discipline of action, aligning your responses with virtue, even when others don't. It's easy to mistake Stoicism for passivity, as if enduring passive aggression means swallowing every slight in silence. But true Stoic action isn't about inaction, it's about right action. When someone drops a snide remark or hides hostility behind a smile, the virtuous response isn't to mirror their energy or seek revenge through subtler means. It's to act in a way that leaves no shadow of doubt about your character. Take gossip, for example. Imagine your coworker makes a veiled jab about your promotion. Some people just know how to play the game. The temptation might be to retaliate by whispering about their incompetence to others, turning their indirectness into your ammunition. But Stoicism asks, does spreading rumors align with who you want to be? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, what's not good for the hive isn't good for the bee. Every action ripples outward, shaping not just the moment but your integrity. Choosing not to gossip, even when provoked, isn't weakness, it's the quiet strength of someone who refuses to let others dictate their ethics. This discipline shines in small, everyday moments. Your friend jokes about your life choices in a group chat, and the room falls awkwardly silent. The easy response is to laugh it off or fire back with a sharper barb. But the Stoic path, you might say, I'm happy with my decisions, but I'd love to hear what's behind that comment. No defensiveness, no escalation, just a gentle redirection toward honesty. You're not avoiding conflict, you're modeling the directness passive aggression avoids. The Stoics called this living according to nature, not trees and rivers, but the nature of your highest self. Epictetus taught that every interaction is an opportunity to practice virtue. If someone irritates you, it's your own opinion that's irritating you. When you respond to provocation with patience instead of pettiness, you're not just managing the situation, you're sculpting your soul. Picture a sculptor chiseling marble. Each strike might seem insignificant, but over time it reveals the form within. Your actions are those strikes. Consider the power of this approach in relationships. A partner sighs, I guess I'll just handle everything myself after you've had a long day. The knee-jerk reaction might be to snap back or guilt-trip them. But virtuous action asks, what would repair this instead of rupturing it further? Maybe it's saying, I hear you're overwhelmed. Let's figure this out together. You're not ignoring their tone, but you're also not letting it derail the bigger goal connection. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily as emperor. Courtiers would flatter him to his face, then undermine him behind closed doors. He could have exiled them or retaliated with political games. Instead, he wrote in his journal, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." His restraint wasn't surrender. It was a refusal to let their behavior lower him to their level. Here's the challenge. Next time passive aggression tempts you to act from spite or insecurity, pause. Ask, what would the person I aspire to be do in this moment? Not the person they've provoked, but the person you're becoming. That's the discipline of action, choosing justice over pettiness, nobility over pettiness, even when no one's watching. Because in the end, as the Stoics knew, the audience that matters most is the one in the mirror. Stoicism has a radical idea at its core, one that can transform how we see passive aggression entirely. Seneca wrote, "We are all limbs of the same body," not as poetry but as practical philosophy. When someone makes a snide comment or hides hostility behind a smile, it's easy to label them as toxic or malicious. But Stoicism invites us to look deeper. What if they're simply lost in their own pain, lashing out with the only tools they have? Imagine a child throwing a tantrum in a grocery store. We don't villainize them for lacking emotional regulation. Passive-aggressive adults are often just taller versions of that child, still struggling to voice their needs without camouflage. This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about recognizing that resentment and compassion can't occupy the same space. When your coworker mutters, "Must be nice to have such an easy job," you could fuel the fire by assuming they're out to get you. Or you could consider, what if they're drowning in workload insecurity? What if their comment is a distorted cry for recognition? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, they hate because they don't know. Passive aggression is often ignorance in disguise, a failure to understand how to ask for what's needed without venom. Here's the Stoic paradox: you can wish someone well and hold firm boundaries. Picture a friend who jokes about your success with an edge in their voice. Instead of matching their energy or withdrawing, try this silent reframe. May you find the peace to celebrate others without comparing. You're not endorsing their behavior, you're refusing to let it harden your heart. Seneca practiced this with critics who mocked his wealth. Rather than retaliate, he wrote, "If you knew my struggles, you'd offer help, not scorn." He extended empathy while staying rooted in his truth. Practical application: next time someone's passive aggression stings, pause and ask, what might they be starving for? Approval, control, a sense of worth. Then silently offer what they actually need, not by tolerating their jabs, but by refusing to reflect their bitterness. Your neighbors, some of us actually maintain our property, might stem from shame about their own untidy yard. Respond with, "Yards take work. Let me know if you'd like gardening tips." You've named the tension without fueling it, offering an olive branch without surrendering your dignity. Epictetus taught that every person is your sibling in reason, flawed, yes, but capable of growth. When we frame passive-aggressive people as misguided rather than evil, we free ourselves from the exhausting cycle of taking their behavior personally. It's like watching someone flail in quicksand. You don't jump in after them, but you don't mock their struggle either. You extend a rope if they choose to grab it. This shift changes everything. That family member who innocently compares your life to your cousin's, instead of seething, consider, maybe they're grieving unmet dreams. Your boss's "I'm surprised you managed this" isn't about your competence, it's their own imposter syndrome talking. Compassion isn't weakness, it's the ultimate power move. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is to be unlike your enemy, or in this case, to recognize they were never your enemy to begin with, just another struggling human, doing their best with the tools they've got. And sometimes the most stoic response is to quietly hope they find better ones. Epictetus once said, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our power. That pause, that breath, is where Stoic grace is born. Picture this: your coworker drops another helpful comment, "Oh, you're actually on time today," and your chest tightens. The old script says fire back or seethe silently, but Stoicism offers a third path: hit the pause button, not to suppress the reaction, but to choose it. That's where mindful breathing becomes your secret weapon. It's not just oxygen, it's a circuit breaker for emotional spikes, creating just enough room to step out of autopilot and into your sovereignty. Here's how it works in the wild. When someone's passive-aggressive remark lands before your lips part or your frown forms, take one deliberate breath. Inhale for 3 counts, hold for 3, exhale for 3. This isn't avoidance, it's interruption. Like hitting pause mid-movie to adjust the volume, those seconds let you dial down the emotional noise. Ancient Stoics didn't have neuroscience, but they knew this truth. Physiology shapes psychology. Slow the breath, and the mind follows. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself like, take refuge in this pause, not as escapism, but as reclamation. Try it next time someone's tone feels like a paper cut. Your sibling mutters, "Must be nice to have so much free time." Instead of snapping or shrinking, breathe. 1 cycle. 2. Notice what happens. The heat in your cheeks cools. The urge to justify or attack softens. Suddenly, you're no longer a puppet to their strings. You're the one holding the scissors. Epictetus called this the discipline of assent, the practice of withholding judgment until reason catches up to reflex. Those 3 breaths are your training ground. This isn't about becoming a statue. It's about creating a buffer between their chaos and your calm. Think of it like a bouncer at the door of your mind. Every inhale checks the invitation. Every exhale decides what gets in. When your boss sighs, "I'm surprised you finished this," your breath becomes the gatekeeper. Does this comment deserve my energy? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And in that realization, you've already won. The magic lies in consistency. Like a muscle, the pause strengthens with repetition. Start small, practice with minor irritations. The barista's sarcastic nice weather, huh? During a downpour, or your partner's "I guess I'll just do it myself." Each time you breathe instead of react, you're rewiring your nervous system to default to agency, not agitation. Seneca described this as building an inner citadel, 1 breath at a time. But here's the twist: the pause isn't just for defense. It's also your launch pad for better responses. Once the initial sting fades, you might choose humor, "Guess I got lucky with the weather." Redirect with curiosity, "What part of the project worried you?" Or simply let silence speak. The breath gives you options beyond fight or flight. Now, imagine a world where you're no longer jerked around by every sideways comment, where passive aggression meets not a reaction, but a relaxed exhale. That's the power of the Stoic pause, not just to survive these moments, but to transcend them. As Epictetus put it, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Those 3 breaths, that's where the saying happens. The rest is just acting from the person you've already decided to become. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait for chaos to find him. He met it at the door with a plan. Every morning, the emperor would mentally rehearse the day's potential friction. "Today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence." This wasn't pessimism, it was emotional armor forged in advance. Think of it like a fire drill for your composure. When passive aggression flares up, you've already navigated it in your mind, so the real encounter feels like a rerun rather than a crisis. Take the colleague who polishes feedback with sandpaper. "Oh, I'm surprised you took this approach, but interesting." Instead of scrambling for a response in the moment, preempt their pattern. Script a neutral reply like, "I'm open to better ideas. What would you suggest?" You've done three things: named their unspoken critique, redirected the energy toward solutions, and refused to mirror their tone. Seneca called this preparing the mind to meet troubles halfway, not to borrow trouble, but to strip it of surprise. Here's how to make it practical. Identify your recurring scenarios: the relative who jokes about your life choices, the roommate who helpfully restacks dishes with a sigh. Now draft responses that hold grace and ground. For the aunt who quips you're still single, try, "I'm right where I need to be, how's Uncle Bob?" For the co-worker who murmurs, "Must be nice to leave early," a simple, "I prioritize efficiency." Happy to share tips shifts the narrative. These aren't clapbacks, they're conversational judo throws, using their momentum to steer the interaction upward. The magic lies in rehearsal. Athletes visualize plays before the game. Stoics visualize composure before the conflict. Picture the smirk, the loaded pause, the accidental CC on that email. Then see yourself breathing, pausing, responding with detached clarity. Marcus scribbled in his journal, "When you wake up, tell yourself, the people I meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, not to resent them, but to remove the sting of surprise." Passive aggression loses its power when you've already seen the script. Try this tonight. Pick one predictable friction point. Script 3 responses: neutral, humorous, and redirecting. Test them aloud. Notice how preparation drains the tension from hypotheticals. Epictetus said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Preemptive grace is the art of adjusting those judgments before the event even arrives. And here's the twist: when you've rehearsed calm, you often won't need it. Like an umbrella that wards off rain by its mere presence, the readiness to respond well can quietly alter the dynamic before a single barb lands, the critic who always nitpicks your reports. When you greet their next, "This could be bolder. With which section would you prioritize?" Watch their script falter. You're not playing the role they cast you in anymore, you've rewritten the scene. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his real power lay in ruling his reactions. "The art of living," he wrote, "is more like wrestling than dancing, because it requires readiness for what comes at you unexpectedly." Preemptive grace is that readiness not as paranoia, but as profound self-defense. Because when you've already walked the battlefield in your mind, the real skirmish becomes just another stretch of road you've mapped. And the person who once threw you off balance, they'll find you standing firm, not because you braced for impact, but because you chose the ground you'd stand on long before they ever swung. Words have a peculiar power. They can either drag us deeper into chaos or become lifelines back to calm. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. Epictetus, the philosopher who endured slavery and exile, left us a simple but profound tool. It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. These aren't just words to read, they're anchors to grip when passive-aggressive waves threaten to pull you under. Think of them like mental buoys, short, weighted phrases you can reach for when someone's tone drips with faux sweetness or their compliment feels like a serrated edge. Consider the classic "this too shall pass." It's not about dismissing the sting of a backhanded remark, but about zooming out. That coworker who mutters, "Must be nice to have the boss's favor." Their words feel heavy in the moment, but like storm clouds, they'll drift. Marcus Aurelius whispered to himself, "You're just a little soul carrying around a corpse." Morbid, maybe, but also liberating. It strips away the illusion that someone else's pettiness has any real weight in the grand scheme of your existence. Epictetus took it further: endure and renounce, not endure and endure, as if Stoicism were about suffering silently, but endure and let go. When your aunt sighs, you're still doing that hobby. You might clench your jaw, that's the endure. Then comes the renounce, releasing the need to correct her, to justify, to win. Imagine dropping a pebble into a pond. The ripples fade on their own if you don't keep throwing stones. Here's the secret: these mantras work because they're not passive. They're active reframes. No one can hurt you without your consent isn't a platitude. It's a permission slip to revoke someone's emotional access. When your roommate slams cabinets while joking about doing all the cleaning, try silently repeating Seneca's line: they hate because they don't know. Suddenly, their behavior feels less like an attack and more like a cry for help you don't have to answer. The beauty of Stoic mantras lies in their simplicity. You don't need a philosophy degree to murmur "amor fati," love your fate, when plans unravel because someone forgot to include you. It's not about liking the situation, but about refusing to let resentment hijack your peace. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, put it best: we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak. Sometimes the most powerful mantra is silence itself, a deliberate pause that lets their words hang in the air, unanswered and unamplified. So here's a challenge: what's your go-to Stoic phrase when tension rises? Maybe it's Marcus's "the obstacle is the way," transforming passive aggression into fuel for growth. Or Epictetus's "if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, don't make excuses, reply, he must not know my other faults, or he would not have mentioned these." Humor as armor. The key is to choose words that resonate for you, then etch them into your mind like grooves in a well-worn path, so when the terrain gets rocky, your footing stays sure. Because in the end, these mantras aren't just shields. They're mirrors reflecting back a truth passive aggression tries to obscure. Your peace was never theirs to disturb in the first place. Digital spaces amplify passive aggression like a megaphone. Vague booking, subtweeting, the dreaded, interesting comment with no follow-up. Seneca saw this coming 2,000 years ago when he warned, "Avoid the crowd, it will either corrupt you or make you miserable." He wasn't talking about Twitter threads, but the principle holds: online passive aggressiveness thrives on attention, and your engagement is its oxygen. Think of that acquaintance who posts, "Some people just don't appreciate loyalty." Instead of addressing a conflict directly, the Stoic move: scroll past. Not out of weakness, but because your keyboard isn't a confessional booth for their unresolved drama. Consider the psychology behind vague booking. When someone posts, "wow," just wow, without context, they're casting a line baited with curiosity. Every "you okay" comment is a tug on that line, rewarding their indirectness. Stoicism teaches us to recognize these traps not with judgment, but with detached awareness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." Online calm isn't just silence, it's the refusal to play emotional whack-a-mole with someone's ambiguous negativity. Here's how to apply this. When you encounter a passive-aggressive post, pause and ask Seneca's question: what's the wise person's role here? Often, it's to not be the audience they crave. Picture a coworker's LinkedIn post. Real leaders show up not just when it's convenient. Your fingers itch to reply. But the Stoic asks, will my response improve anything, or simply feed their need for conflict without accountability? Epictetus offered a litmus test. If you wouldn't say it to their face, don't type it. Digital courage isn't clapping back, it's choosing not to clap at all. The comment section is where Stoic restraint shines brightest. Someone critiques your photo with "brave choice for someone your age." The unstoic reaction drafts a paragraph about their insecurity. The Stoic either ignores it or replies with "thanks for the engagement boost," turning their jab into a joke they're not in on. This isn't avoidance, it's strategic disengagement. Like a Roman general refusing to battle on swampy ground, you're choosing terrain that doesn't sink your dignity. Group chats demand special vigilance. That, "I guess no one cared about my birthday" text, it's a guilt grenade. Respond with clarity, not guilt-tripping. Happy belated. Let's celebrate Thursday. You've acknowledged without feeding the narrative. Stoicism thrives in these micro moments where others zig into drama, you zag into solutions. For direct messages dripping with faux concern, "Did you mean to send that typo?" Borrow Marcus Aurelius' mirror technique. What does this say about them? Maybe they're starved for control or relishing petty superiority. Either way, their behavior is their curriculum, not yours. A simple, "yep, all good," halts their momentum like a judo throw, the ultimate digital Stoic practice. Curate your feeds like a philosopher king. Unfollow chronic vague posters. Mute the colleague who lived tweets office gripes. Seneca didn't suffer fools in the forum, and you needn't in your feed. As he wrote to Lucilius, "You must withdraw into yourself, for noisy crowds crush all refinement." Your attention is finite, spend it where it nurtures, not depletes. So next time your thumb hovers over a snarky reply or a "who's this about" comment, remember, the internet's greatest power isn't connection, it's the option to disconnect. And sometimes the loudest statement is the one you never type. We've traveled a long road together, from recognizing passive-aggressive barbs to disarming them with Stoic wisdom. But let's gather these tools one last time, because their power multiplies when woven together. First, control, that unshakable truth that while you can't dictate others' words, you always choose your response. Remember the coworker's backhanded compliment or the relative's loaded joke. They're like weather, unpredictable, uncontrollable, but your mind, that's your inner citadel. Then there's detachment, not cold indifference, but the art of seeing passive aggression as a reflection of the speaker's struggles, not your worth. Picture their words as smoke drifting past, visible but harmless unless you inhale. And finally, compassion, the realization that hurt people often hurt others, even in subtle ways. When your friend mutters, "Must be nice to afford vacations," that's not about your budget, it's their unmet longing speaking. Stoicism transforms these encounters from irritants to invitations not to fight, but to fortify. Every sigh, every sideways comment becomes a chance to practice emotional alchemy, turning pettiness into patience and frustration into resilience. Marcus Aurelius faced far worse than office gossip or family snipes. He governed an empire while enduring betrayal and plague. Yet his journals reveal no tirades against passive-aggressive senators, just steady reminders. You have power over your mind, not outside events. That's the ultimate takeaway. Passive-aggressiveness only wins if you surrender your peace to it. Now, here's your challenge, because wisdom untested is just theory. Which Stoic tool will you wield first? Maybe it's the pause, breathing before reacting when someone's tone feels like a paper cut. Or perhaps reframing, asking, what pain might be driving this remark? Like a detective solving a mystery, it could be as simple as trying Seneca's mantra, "They hate because they don't know," letting harsh words reveal the other person's limits, not yours. So as we close, remember this: the next time passive aggression knocks, you won't just handle it, you'll transcend it. Not with clapbacks or silence, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth isn't up for debate. Marcus Aurelius didn't conquer his world through battles or edicts, but by mastering his mind. And that's a conquest available to anyone, starting with your very next conversation. The question isn't if passive aggression will find you again, but how you'll meet it. Will it be the old reactive ways or the Stoic path where every slight is just another stone on the road to unshakable strength? The choice, as always, is